I want to say good evening, fellow Liberians. I decided to take this moment to congratulate Senator George Weah on his apparent victory in this runoff vote. I think he accomplished a great feat. The Liberian people, the will of the majority must prevail and as such be respected. We did not support him, we opposed him. We did not believe him to be the right man. But once the people vote and they vote for him, we have to respect that. So I want to say congratulations to Senator Weah. He's been given a 6-year mandate to serve our country. And I'm a patriot. I like to think of myself as such. And I will continue to do my little bit to help my country from where I sit. And I want his supporters to know that we were not enemies just because we oppose your candidate. We're all Liberians. I have brothers and sisters in the CDC, as I've been saying. And I only hope that he works in the interest of the country to prove us wrong. Those of us who doubt him. It will be an opportunity for him to prove us all wrong and do right by our people. And so, elections all over the world, people are opposed by people who don't support them or who don't believe in their agenda. But the opportunity will be given him to prove us wrong for the good of our people. And when you win, you now become the leader of the country, not the leader of your party. And that is what it's about. He's now the leader of the country. He is at a higher level than the rest of us. He now has to step up to reach out to the rest of the country. Not me, I'm an insignificant person, but to all of the other people, particularly the Vice President Joseph Weah. You all would agree with me that the country is divided. And this is now the test of Ambassador Weah's ability to reconcile the people, bringing people together and ensuring that Liberia will remain peaceful and stable. And when I mean bringing people together, not necessarily giving people jobs, but ensuring that people can live in a country and not be afraid of him. You know, one of the things that Nelson Mandela said and did after he came out of prison, after 27 years in prison, he came out. There were a lot of people who felt that the right thing to do was to suppress the white people for what they had done. People wanted recriminations. People wanted settling scores. They wanted an agenda of vendetta. But Mandela said, no, that is not what we should do. We should work to bring all of our people together. Because the white people were afraid. Because they had done so much wrong to the black people of South Africa that they felt that the day the white people came to power, the black people came to power, they would go after them to settle score. And so Nelson Mandela worked to disarm the white people of their fear. Sometimes fear is what makes people stand up and fight or resist people. And so that is what George Weah now has to do. Like I said, it should not be about patronage, about simply giving people jobs in order to reconcile. I believe giving people jobs does not reconcile. Reconciling means to ensure that everybody can live freely in the country. All I want from President George Weah is for me, Henry Costa, as a Liberian citizen, to continue to exercise my God-given constitutionally protected rights. That's all I want. That's all I want. If you consider my criticism of him as insults, it is your business. I will not simply stop being a critic. The onus is now on George Weah as the president. When you are the president of the country, you are robbed of certain personal luxuries. You can no longer afford to be seen as an enemy of a particular individual. You have to be there for the rest of the country, for everybody. That is exactly what George Weah has to be there for. But, like I said, he has the opportunity to prove us right or wrong. I want him to prove us wrong. I want him to prove us wrong, specifically when it comes to being a Democratic leader. I do not want to miss Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. I do not want to miss her in the sense that she tolerated me for 6.5 years. Yes, I did go to jail a few times, but we want to continue to enjoy this space. We want to continue to enjoy this democratic space that we have. Some people will be making threats, but we still have the systems here in place. Don't forget, we have a judiciary, we have the legislature, and Ambassador Weah heads is going to head the executive. And he has 6 years. He has to prove himself. He has a lot to live up to. The expectations of his supporters, particularly his supporters, they expect gold and diamond, milk and honey. They expect that overnight they will get jobs. Their problems will go away. There are a lot of expectations being on him. When you come to power, supported by the grassroots, the downtrodden people, they expect that you provide milk and honey. Some of them think that everything will be fine. But I want people to manage their expectations. It's not going to be milk and honey. It's not going to be milk and honey because George Weah doesn't have billions of dollars sitting down somewhere to come and spread it around to people. It's going to be tough. This is going to be a tough ride. You're not suddenly going to have paved roads everywhere. Even if Joe Biden had won, it was not suddenly going to happen overnight. But what concerns me the most is how he goes about. My interest is us continuing to enjoy our free speech. That's it. Freedom of expression. That's all I want. Some of you want jobs. I don't want a job. I've created jobs. Freedom of expression. Our rights to associate freely within our political parties and to participate within the political space. That is all I want. And then, of course, people must not be suppressed. We should be allowed to continue to pursue our business opportunities. We must be allowed to continue to... Liberia will never belong to one person. Just because he's announced president of the country does not mean that he's automatically the owner of the country. That's something I have fought against. Like Nelson Mandela said on the day of his trial, I have fought against white domination. And I also fight against black domination. There should be no kind of domination of one people over the others. Joseph Boakai is a fine candidate. Perhaps if we went to election again and were faced with a runoff scenario and Joseph Boakai and George Weah were in a runoff, I will still vote for Joseph Boakai over George Weah. I will not change about that. I do not hate George Weah. I just don't have confidence in his ability to lead. But the Liberian people decided to choose George Weah over Joseph Boakai because of the massive failures of the Unity Party, not the personal failures of Joseph Boakai or the personal inadequacies of Joseph Boakai, who is a very decent man. Joseph Boakai was going up against the odds. Madam Sirleaf had created too much baggage, and the Liberian people who voted for George Weah in their numbers, they voted for George Weah because they want change. You think I don't know that? He didn't tell them what kind of change. No, he did not say what kind of change. He just said change. In 2008, Barack Obama was elected to the presidency of the United States of America because the American people were tired with the system that was prosecuted by the Republicans, and they just want to change. All they wanted was change, and they didn't care what kind of change. They just wanted change. And Obama said, change, yes we can. And that's it. And so George Weah realized that the Liberian people were tired with the system, not necessarily with Joe Boakai, but with Mrs. Sirleaf and her administration. And so they said, change. George Weah said change, and they just tired. They couldn't easily separate Joseph Boakai from the administration of the Unity Party. They could not. They could not separate. You see, so they want to change. And it was a difficult sell, telling them that this party should have another 6 years in office. Even though Joe Boakai is a decent man, to me he's a better candidate than George Weah. But George Weah saw the message, or was on the side that the moment favors. You see, they say in life, Abraham Lincoln said, men are the creatures of their circumstances. And when you win, folks, the most important thing is not winning. The most important thing is what you do with the victory. When Mrs. Sirleaf won, the whole country was looking up to her. She had promised the whole world that she would deliver to the Liberian people. And then, of course, the rest is history. When you win, it is now about reaching out to all and trying to disarm people of their fear of you. That's what it's about. Again, if I had to choose between George Weah and Joseph Boakai, I would choose Joseph Boakai. Because Joseph Boakai told me what he would do. It made sense. And how and what. Weah did not tell me. So it is up to George Weah now to prove himself. To prove himself what he can do. So again, while George Weah may not have been my candidate in a runoff, but George Weah is going to be my president. And as my president, George Weah is going to be accountable to me. George Weah would no longer be the leader of the CDC. George Weah would be the leader of the country. You citizens, you need to help George Weah reconcile the country. You need to help him by the way you interact and you talk to other Liberians who did not support George Weah. All of us cannot and will not support one party or one candidate. It is democracy, the will of the people. It is politics, set of values and principles that we all do not share in common. So just because Joseph Boakai did not win the election does not mean that he was a lesser candidate in quality than George Weah. It is just that the Liberian people are tired and they want something new. And they don't know what they're settling for. They don't know what's in it for them. But they're so desperate, they are so tired, they are so weary of 12 years of nepotism, of corruption, and they just want somebody new. Whatever it is that that person does, they don't really care. To them, they're saying, when we get to that bridge, we'll cross it. But just give us something new. And so now George Weah has a clean slate, blank paper, and he's been given the pencil with which to draw what this change is. He has to now flesh out the change. He has to now practicalize the change. He has to now reach out and endear and cozy up to the rest of the country that didn't support him, that doesn't believe in him. That's what he needs to do. For me, at this point, I stand. I remain on my platform. And in the beginning, I will give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to make this promise to you. I will remain on the radio. I will give him the benefit of the doubt. I will allow him to form his government. I will begin now to look at how he runs the country. And I will start to criticize the government based on how the government performs. That is what I'm going to do as a Liberian citizen. But I do not owe any regrets or any apology to anybody for the decision that I took. Again, if George Weah and Joe Boakai were in another election, I would again vote for Joe Boakai. You need to believe that. That's what I will do. Why are many of you so concerned about how I feel? Because you realize that I have a space in this country just as much as you have a space in the country. Just because one man wins today doesn't mean that the country belongs to the group of people who supported that person. The country belongs to all of us. And hate is not the way to go forward. Reconciliation should be paramount on George Weah's agenda. Reaching out to all Liberians, not personally, but in a way that says, let's put the election rhetorics behind us and need all of your support morally to move the country forward. That is the kind of message, that is the kind of speech that I'm waiting for from President-elect George Weah. That's what I want. That is the kind of message that I want. But I'll tell you this, I will remain on this radio. When you have problems, you will come to me. And just because you have your candidate you wanted to be president doesn't mean that all of the problems in the country will simply go away. They're not going to go away. There will still be corruption in the country. George Weah will have to demonstrate political will to fight corruption. One of the reasons why the Unity Party has now been booted out, not because of Vice President Boakai's fault, but because of what Mr. Sirleaf did. Just because George Weah is president, the guy you love so much, it doesn't mean that people won't get wrongfully treated in their places of work and they would not need an advocate to go to, and I will still be there. Just because George Weah is president of the country, it wouldn't mean that people would not have serious medical conditions or ailments that will require them to raise extra funds through a medium such as mine to go abroad to seek treatment. I hope it's not going to be too long before we can invest in fixing our own healthcare system in this country. So just because George Weah is our president-elect and is going to be our president doesn't mean that each of us who do not agree with him are not going to have a space in this country. It should not mean that just because we didn't support him, that we do not have a voice in this country. That is what brings some of the most loved, some of the most beloved leaders down. When they become arrogant and sullen-headed by their victory, they forget and they want to now say, it is my time. When you win, and if you were not the humble type, when you win, that is when you should begin to show humility and magnanimity, conciliation. That's when you show that. You know, I'll tell you a story. Winston Churchill was one of the greatest statesmen of his time. And he was the Prime Minister of Great Britain during the Second World War. He was peers of Franklin Roosevelt and Joseph Stalin. And one day, a lady said something about one man and said that the man was humble. And Churchill said, no, he's naturally humble. He has to be humble because he's a nobody. People who are nobody, like myself, cannot claim humility because we are nobody. But people who have attained greatness, people who have had the great moments, that is when they can claim humility. Humility is when you are towering above everybody else, and yet you choose to remain humble. I remember listening to an interview once. Rap mogul and producer and business entrepreneur Jay-Z said once, he said, look, one of the reasons why I keep good friends such as Memphis Bleeks around me, friends who knew me from back in the day when I was struggling in New York, and still a young, poor, broke rapper, I keep these guys around to remind me from whence I come. I keep him around so that when I am soaring like an eagle, when I want to take off from the ground because of my tremendous success, these guys virtually hold my feet and bring me back to the ground to remind me from where I came. And so that is it. You have to constantly be reminded from where you came. So Senator Weah is not my enemy. We were friends once. Now he's my president. I have to live with that for the next 6 years. If he manages to do well and get it re-elected to a 6-year term, which is possible, I will live with that. And my role, all I want George Weah to do is to respect my rights. My rights as a Liberian citizen. My rights to free speech, to freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, protection from the law and under the law. That is what I want from George Weah. That's all I want from him. And him as president, I will give him my support as a patriotic Liberian citizen. I will not begin to bash him, to criticize him, to lambast him and talk down to him and vilify him when he hasn't done anything yet as president. But when he is president of the country and he begins to serve, it would now be the moment when I, as a citizen, whose voice I want to continue to be heard, that's when I have the opportunity to tell him how I feel. And so, tonight, I am not crying. I am not bitter. That's why I'm doing this video. I'm doing this video to say congratulations to Ambassador, Senator, President-elect George Mane Weah. I will be on the radio on Monday morning, and I will be taking calls from all Liberians, from the Unity Party, from the ALP, the ANC, to convey their congratulatory messages to our President-elect. That is what I will do. I will be in this country. I hope to be able to stay here when I want to, leave when I want to, as should any Liberian citizen. And that is the kind of Liberia that I am fighting for. And so George Weah has my support as a Liberian citizen. And I will continue to do my job. Like I said, let him be different from Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. I hope he will be a domestically oriented president. A president who will care more about his people at home rather than accolades and pleasantries and pomp and pageantry abroad. A president who will prioritize the ordinary people, and a president who will have demonstrable political will to fight the ills in our society. A president who will lead by example. A president who will be president for all and not president for some. A president who will work on the budget, cut excessive spending, put more money in areas that will improve the conditions of our people. A president who will look out for even those who did not stand with him, who would ensure that every Liberian has an opportunity, especially business people, entrepreneurs like myself, who can continue to do good in the private sector and help support the government's agenda by creating opportunities of employment. I hope he will be a president that ensures that no one gets killed or beaten or put in jail for his views or for his affiliation, for his beliefs. I hope that he will be a president who will be above the fray and will tolerate dissent and encourage it, in fact, embrace it. A president who will disarm the rest of us of our fears. That is the kind of president that I hope George Weah will be. And so I stand here, feeling relieved that finally we have a new president. We have a 51-year-old man who came from abject poverty, like myself, born in a poor little village, who, through his insatiable quest to break himself free from the shackles of grinding poverty and bring economic relief to his family and himself, dropped out of school, seized an opportunity to go to Cameroon to play football, and in the end, he became the greatest player produced by the continent of Africa. Encouraged to enter politics with a purported promise to give people like himself the opportunity to transform their lives as he did for himself. Now he's been given that opportunity. He's the first footballer, ex-footballer, to be elected president on the continent of Africa. We've made history again. We've made history again. But the mere election of George Weah as president does not suffice. It is what he does with the presidency that will be the history. You know, Abraham Lincoln said, "It is not what we say yet that they will remember. The world will little not no longer remember what we say yet, but it will not forget what they did yet." The world will not forget what George Weah does. The world will be watching because the world knows George Weah. George Weah has to step up and ensure that the rest of the world can be proud of him as the world back in the 90s when he captivated and mesmerized the world on the football pitch, when he raised our flag high. Yes, the election is over. It is time for national reconciliation. It is time for nation building. It is time for President-elect George Weah to make history yet again as the first great football player who became president, who rode on the wave of the frustration and disenchantment of the poor downtrodden masses against the small elites or elite class of our people. It is an opportunity for him to prove them wrong, to make us all proud, to seal our lips, to give us no reason to justifiably or legitimately criticize him. It is his opportunity. George Weah's ascendancy to the presidency also does something similar to what Barack Obama's ascendancy to the American presidency did. Who would have thought that an unsophisticated footballer with very little formal education would rise to global prominence on the football pitch and go on to become president of his country? Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Who would have thought? But it's happened. Who am I? It's happened. So, the opportunity is now his to make us all proud or shame. It's his. We fought a good fight, but the will of the people is the will of God. Again, I say, if I had to choose between Joe Boakai and George Weah, I probably, most likely, would choose Joe Boakai. But that's just me. The majority of the people who are equally Liberian as I am have spoken. And so I say salute. They say the people get the government they deserve. They say the government is the reflection of the people. May this government under George Weah do well for the people that I love so much. And I will continue to be there to serve these people. I am not bitter. I have moved on. And I say, Mr. Incoming President, the onus is upon you. The onus is upon you. And to those of you who support George Weah, the best way you can help him is to now reach out to people in the community who did not believe in him and did not support him, to reach out to them and try to reconcile with them on the personal. And then, of course, I hope George Weah can cement all of that, climax it, by being the guy that everybody wants him to be. So there you have it, folks. President George Manuel Weah. Who would have thought? I never believed it would happen. I was wrong. I never believed it would happen. I never believed it would happen. But it has happened. So what do? I must live with it. I must live with it. I must live with it. He's our president. He's our president. Now he owes me more. He owes me more as president. As a leader of his party, he did not owe me anything. But as president of my country and your country, he owes me more. Thank you very much. God bless you. And may God bless our beloved country. In union strong, success is sure. May we defend our country with valor unpretending. Bye-bye.